Alright, we have a bit of a crazy combination for you this time. We have the Group 5 cars around Macau. Qualified right about 10th. Not too bad, not too great. It's going to be very tricky with these monstrous cars. And I am driving the Greenwood Chevrolet, mostly because I think it makes one of the best noises ever known to man. Oh man, does it sound good. But this should be a relatively fun combination anyway. Because this Chevy really, you have to brake quite early around here with it. But there is, as wide as some of these cars are, there's still a couple spots where you can overtake if you have to. It's obviously not ideal. You really want to make your overtaking moves into that first corner. But you can run side by side here if you try really hard. As if to prove my point, one of the AI comes up and challenges me. But there is definitely room to run side by side here. Although it will make you slower than if you're able to run the full width of the course on your own. Oh, almost lost it there. Had to just let go of everything. Let it bring itself back. It's a really fun circuit, but tight circuits like this are not what these Group 5 cars were made for. Although they do end up being very fun on them nonetheless. And again, how can you hate that Corvette sound? That big old naturally aspirated V8 with that, the way it kicks when it backfires. Oh. And surprisingly, these cars actually can make this corner. And I can get a couple of the AI pretty much every time around the... Yeah, it's a little too nice around the hairpin. But it lets me take advantage of it, so I'm not complaining. The big thing with this Greenwood Corvette is you just have to brake so much earlier than you expect. Because one, you're carrying a ton of speed, and two, it just doesn't scrub off speed all that efficiently. But again, part of that is because you're generally going a lot faster than you realize. But man, is this thing fun to drive. This is probably my favorite Group 5 car. I mean, obviously the sound is just unbelievable. But beside that, I think it's actually a ton of fun in the way it feels. I actually got a lot more braking efficiency than I'm used to. I'm used to braking right at that 200 meter board and just barely getting it woed down in time. But there's a lot of these corners around Macau in particular, in these cars, where you really have to slow it down much earlier than in other cars. Like for example, the touring cars can take that corner much quicker, and this whole section, you just have to be light taps on the brakes to get through it, whereas in these, a couple of the corners you're really having to get pretty heavily on the brake pedal. Looks like we got a little group in here, starting before. Might be able to pick a couple of these guys off at the hairpin this time. This corner in particular is really tough. If you don't brake in a straight line for that one, then you will easily doom yourself to hit that barrier on the left-hand side. Oh, that was not how I wanted to accomplish that, but it still works. This car is always a little wider than it feels. Oh no. Luckily these cars have enough power to whip themselves around pretty quickly, which is very handy in situations like that. Coming out of the hairpin, this car is very, very, very weak though. why I try and carry so much speed through the entry of it. Because I know on exit, this Chevy really tends to just sort of stall more than anything. On the exit at hairpin, it just doesn't, when it's really low in the power band and you put your foot hard down, there's so much stuff trying to happen all at the same time, and it all kind of conflicts and the car just kind of goes bleh. It doesn't quite know what to do. But then once it gets going, it is a beast. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to stay quiet for a little bit of this section and let you guys just listen to the raw V8. So coming through this section here, oops, down an extra gear, we'll do that. So let's just listen and enjoy. Every single time I step on the throttle pedal, it just sounds so wonderful in my ear. It makes you want to hit that pedal harder and harder and harder every single time, and step on it earlier and earlier to get just as much of that noise as you can possibly get. Here we're coming into the hairpin. I can sort of show you what I was talking about on exit here, where I've got a bit of a traffic jam. It's right here. Let's see if it does bite. It usually bites in the wrong way. I have Austin Powers it a little bit. Not ideal there. I was trying to show you guys something. Instead, I spun it. Guess that's a bit of karma for me. Well, not really karma, but oh no. Hey! Helpful, friendly AI turned me around. I should have lost a lot more positions from that, but yeah, it treads a little carefully at the moment. It's better than being too aggressive, but it's also just a little too friendly sometimes, if that makes sense. Either way, I was the benefactor of it, so I can't complain too much. Should be braking right at 200. Start to roll out of the brake before you hit the corner. So you can be completely out of the brake right as you hit the apex. My rears are pretty worn at this point, so I'm having to be more and more careful on throttle. Just how aggressive I am, because this will want to turn itself around more and more as the rears just wear themselves out. But this car does accelerate really well, which is good. So I should be pretty okay to keep my position, assuming I don't make any silly mistakes again, which, knowing myself, it's very likely. But at the same time, I'm pretty comfortable with Macau now and this car, so it's a little bit easier for me to get it around here without throwing it into a wall every time, like the first couple times I tried Macau. When you're learning this track, it's pretty tricky. Not as tricky as the Nordschleife, but pretty tricky anyway. Yeah, I just had no braking there. And this corner sequence, that left and right doesn't seem very difficult. You would be surprised how often your car will want to turn itself sideways in one or both of those corners. Got about 4 minutes left. That's about 2.5 laps. Well, actually, it's right about 2 laps. Ooh. My fronts just did not grip at all. Either way, it looks like I might be able to get 9th. And I'm pulling away from 11th, so looks like I'm likely to finish either exactly where I started or just a little bit better. Had I not made all those mistakes, I think I could have finished pretty decently. But at the same time, the AI also did not punish me as much as it probably should have for some of those mistakes I made. Because a couple of them were in sequences where, yeah, I had no choice and it couldn't get around me. Because I was just blocking the entire road. So I got lucky, and I got to get away with some of my mistakes, and not lose too many positions off of it. I'm just gonna have to be so careful on these last 2 laps though. My tires, at the rear especially, are very much worn. And even at the front, they're starting to really not be anywhere near as grippy as they were before. It's not uncontrollable yet, it's not like it's on ice or anything, but it's definitely, you definitely feel that the same amount of grip is not there as there was before. As I have to slide it through that corner. Not intentional, but completely proves my point quite accurately. Just have to be more and more careful about the trail braking that I do when my tires start to get worn like this. And I also have to brake a little bit earlier for a couple sections. But that's what I mean about trying to take the entry of that as wide and as quickly as possible. Because the slower you take that entry, the more likely you are to sort of over-exaggerate the turn, and then you just sort of throw the car further back than it needs to go, and you just end up hitting that little outcropping instead of actually making the turn. At least that's for me. So I try to throw that hairpin a little bit quicker into it than I normally would. This is where I make up so much time. But I try to throw it a little faster in, and then just really rotate the car right as I'm getting the last part of my braking done. It seems to work for me, at least. Again, the more worn my tires are, the more I have to stay completely on the brake pedal for that third corner, instead of being able to roll out of it a little earlier. I was a little too early on the brakes there. But at this point in the race, being too early on the brakes is much better than being too late. Because being too late will mean you're probably going to carry too much speed and spin. Because at a place like Macau, if you carry too much speed through a corner, you don't have anywhere to go except into a wall. That is not usually a great option that many people want. Usually you want to avoid the walls. Even there, that was about half throttle. It still wanted to turn me sideways. So my tires are very much not at their optimal right now. they're still drivable. Although again, you can see from the timer at the top that I'm definitely not losing time through most of the track. Then I gain it back in the really quick section, which for this Corvette actually does make sense. That is most likely where it makes its biggest advantage. It's on the big open straightaways where it can really flex its V8 muscle. It's kind of interesting. For these cars, you have to pick different braking points than you normally would. Because into that last corner, you have to brake a little bit before the 100-meter board. And in the second to last corner, also a little bit before the 100-meter board, so you can't quite use those. And depending on the lighting you have, you might not have a good shadow or spot on the track that's easy to view. Judging from the gap to the car ahead, it seems like the AI is dealing with worn tires much better than I am. With that being said, I did have to turn my car around, what, 2, maybe 3 times? So I'm sure that took a lot of life out of my rears that the AI may not have the same problems for. Man, that corner just gets harder and harder as your car wants to obey your commands less and less as the tires go. Now the fronts are starting to get worn enough to notice also. I'm just having to take that little bit extra amount of speed off going into corners and through the center of a corner, which I already had to brake early anyway in this car, so adjusting those braking points back even further. It's not an easy thing to do, and it's not a thing your brain wants to do, but it's a thing you have to do once your tires start going. This is the last lap, and it's one of those things where I'm sort of rubber banding between the car ahead, where a couple laps in a row I was faster, then one lap he was faster, and we were about the same. Now it looks like I'm faster again. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time left to do anything about it, but I think I would have eventually caught him. Yeah, if I had tried to turn the car at my regular point, it would have just spun. So I had to take a much different approach to that corner. Again, I didn't quite move my braking point far enough back in that penultimate corner. But still, all around, not too shabby. Still managed to finish where I started, and, although I'm on the bottom end of it, still in the top 10. So, I am pretty happy with that. Hopefully, that was enjoyable for you guys. And as always, thank you for stopping by. I will see you all